Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to see such a great group of you here today. Hope that many of you will stay for the career fair following. I am very excited to introduce our special guest speaker today, and if I could ask you, if you have time following the presentation, there are some evaluations at the back of the room. Would love to have your feedback, so please do take a moment after Erin's presentation and provide some feedback, and we will really appreciate having that information. My name is Megan Hill. I work for the University Career Center here at KU. Just want to throw it out there that if you need any assistance from the Career Center or your appropriate Career Center on campus, there are several of us. Please let any of us know and we can make sure you get to the appropriate office and get the help that you need. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Erin Swain. Erin Swain is a Management and Program Analyst at the General Services Administration. She works as a Market Analyst in the Customer Accounts and Research Organization of the Federal Acquisition Service. In her role, she performs market research on agency spend analysis and survey analysis. Erin holds an undergraduate degree in business finance and a Master's of Communications, both from North Carolina State University. She also holds an MBA from Marymount University, which she received in May of 2010. When Erin is not working at GSA, she enjoys long-distance running and competing in road races in the DC area. So please join me in welcoming Erin Swain.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. So again, I'm Erin Swain, and I'm here today to talk to you about making the difference. And I am here not on behalf of my agency, GSA, or the General Services Administration, but on behalf of the Partnership for Public Service. Has anyone ever heard of the partnership? No? Well, good. I'll give you a little background. So their mission is the partnership works to revitalize our federal government by inspiring a new generation to serve and by transforming the way government works. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping that throughout this presentation, I can work to help inspire you and gain some interest in working for the federal government. So I'm going to start with a little special moment of mine in government. I've been working for the federal government for 6 years. I think that's kind of unique in a way because, when I got out of school, I thought maybe I'd work for GSA or the federal government for 2 years and move on to another company like most people do. But now I'm here, and it's been over 6 years this summer. I celebrated my 6-year anniversary, and I really have no intentions on leaving GSA, much less the federal government. So this is a picture of my old team. Actually, as Megan just said, I actually have a new role as a market analyst, but in my former life, I helped run an intern program, and this was my team. In the back of the picture is our commissioner on the left, who basically is the CEO of the part of GSA I work for, and that's his deputy standing next to him. And we were recognized for the work we did with starting a new intern program within GSA, and we got awarded at a really nice celebration. And for me, that was just like maybe the first time I'd gotten rewarded for a really big project I'd worked on. So for me, it was really special and getting to see all that come together. So just a quick little run through of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to tell you guys how I got into the federal government, my federal story, and then we're going to talk about some federal myths that are out there and bust them. Give you guys some resources and tools hopefully to help you in your search, and then we'll have time for questions. And if you have any questions throughout, please stop me. I tend to sometimes speak a little fast, so just raise your hand and I'll just stop if I confuse you in any way. So a little bit about me. As Megan said, I hold an undergraduate degree in finance from NC State, and then I also stayed at NC State and got a master's in communications. So I thought I was going to leave NC State and go work in Charlotte, work for Bank of America. That's what all my finance friends were doing. And then this agency called GSA came recruiting on campus. And I ended up getting interviewed and found out about working for the federal government. And to also, I guess, be honest, I have parents that work for the military, so they immediately were like, you're taking that job. And I was like, okay, I really hadn't, I was from Northern Virginia, that's where I went to high school, and I really didn't know that much about the federal government or that there were all these opportunities in the federal government. So I ended up joining the FMS program, or the Financial Management Specialist program, which was a program unique to GSA, but they pretty much roam around all different agencies. They basically, at the end of the day, are 2-year professional development programs where you're going to come into the agency and do rotations throughout that agency, kind of learning as much as you can. So as a financial management specialist, I was obviously rotating through financial offices, really just trying to grasp like the financial analysis that we do at GSA, and really just trying to learn about our agency. So I did that for 2 years, and then kind of randomly ended up getting into human capital. Kind of by chance, I ended up doing a rotation, and I ended up kind of being the go-to person in that office. The Office of Administration was what it was called, doing basically event planning and budget. I was doing all of our wellness events, all of our cultural events. I was managing our employee engagement survey. The Q12 is what we do at GSA, and really just kind of, to me, doing a bunch of fun things. And then about a year into that permanent position, I got to help launch a new intern program at GSA that was called the, we use a lot of acronyms in the government, so that's what this slide is showing you, but it was the ECPDP, or what we like to call the Early Career Professional Development Program. So for the past 3.5 years, and that award that you saw me receive earlier that I showed you a picture of, I was helping go out to college campuses, recruit entry-level students into the federal government. I was getting to set up their training and development plans and get to set up their rotations throughout GSA. So for me, it was really great because I'd come from an intern program and really getting to share those experiences with new people joining the federal government. So then, while I was in that program, I was fortunate enough to go and get my MBA. I got it at a local university in DC, or Arlington, called Marymount. And also, even on the side of that, I was getting a project management certification. And it's a pretty well-known certification throughout private and public sector. And one day I'm hoping that when I find time, I will sit for my PMP exam and be fully certified in project management. And then last but not least, as Megan said, my new role is to be a market analyst. So I've only been on that job for about 3 weeks, really relatively new. But we have kind of a unique agency that I particularly work for, where I get to actually kind of engage in some spend analysis, looking at what our agency what other agencies buy from my agency, and kind of analyze that spend and seek out opportunities for my agency to go after different products and services to sell to the federal government. So I've done a lot in 6 years, I think. I mean, I've really gone from kind of finance to human capital and now into marketing, and I haven't even touched half of what GSA, much less the rest of the federal government, has to offer. And so again, just kind of hitting it again, so as a market analyst, because that's kind of, that term can kind of mean a lot, maybe at another company, like I'll specifically be doing like market research and spend analysis, business development, and survey administration. We do an annual customer satisfaction and loyalty survey, kind of assessing how we're performing to our customers. So I'm going to be kind of in charge of helping run that program. So again, I think that hopefully through just telling you a little bit about what I've done, it can help hit home that you can do so much working in the federal government, and there's so many different opportunities. So actually, before I go there, what are some kind of things you guys have heard, whether positive or negative, about working for the federal government? You can just raise your hand, then if anyone has anything to. Go ahead. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'm going to kind of go through like what the partnership likes to call kind of the 4 major myths, because there's a lot of them out there, whether they're myths or whether they're true, but just kind of help give you guys some idea a little bit more about the federal government and about the process to get in. So we have the political science major myth, the low pay myth, the Washington, D.C. myth, and our last myth, bureaucracy. So kind of the first myth that we kind of all hear is, like if you don't have a social science major, you're not going to be looked at, because those are the only kind of backgrounds that they go after. Well, before I even hit the next slide that's going to give you guys a bunch of stats, like you've heard my story, I have a MBA, a finance degree, and a communications degree. So I don't fit into the social sciences. So again, in 2009, of the 103,000 people that were hired into the federal government, this is kind of a look at the different degrees. And as you can see, social sciences actually ranks number 5. So there's a lot of business and accounting, legal, medical, and public health. And so what's so great is that no matter what your degree, and I can attest to that because I've actually gone out and hired students, and we had chemistry majors, we had law majors, we had business majors. It really was a variety. We had public administration. So we never were necessarily looking for one type or another. Yeah, do we get more business majors applying? Of course. I think that naturally that had to do with the type of agency that I work for, not necessarily because only business majors fit. It was just my agency has a lot of business type jobs. So kind of the whole myth that we don't make any money, that our pay is low, and that you're better off going to work for the private sector. And a personal story on that note that I've been kind of telling all day is that when I started, again, I was kind of thinking I'd go to Charlotte, work for a bank, and some of the other offers I had were definitely higher salary than the job I ended up taking at GSA. And a lot of my friends were making more money than me when we started. And living in DC is not very cheap. So definitely at first I had to weigh my options. But I can tell you that now, 6 years working in the federal government, I'm actually making more than most of my friends in DC. And we'll kind of go through that. So federal salaries are on what's called the general schedule, or the GS scale, and it ranges from 1 to 15. It's a public knowledge scale. You can Google GS salary scale, and every year it'll pop up, and it's based on your city. It's based on geographic location. Every one of those grades has 10 steps. So it's kind of a little bit overwhelming looking at this chart and figuring out where you would be. But for the most part, if you start off with just a bachelor's degree, you're going to come in as a 5 or a 7. It's based on your GPA being over a 3.0. If you're over a 3.0, you'll start as a GS7. And then if you have a master's, you'll start as a GS9. So basically, those are the kind of positions based on your skill set and your grade level that you want to start to go after when you're looking at jobs online, just to give you a little bit of background. And so this is kind of a glance at the scale from 2010 salaries. And actually, the 2011 scale is exactly the same, because if you have been reading anything about in Congress, basically, we are on actually a salary freeze. So this scale has frozen. It used to change a little bit every year naturally for inflation, and now it's kind of stuck until 2013. So basically, you can see in DC, like if you start off as a GS5, 34, and with getting an increase to a GS7, you'll be at 42. So basically, in 2 to 3 years, you can progress rather fast. And most of the programs, like the one I described I came into, is what most people entry level or right out of their master's or advanced degree come in as. So you're going to come in as a 7 or a 9, and immediately within a year get promoted to from a 9 to an 11, from an 11 to a 12. So I started as a GS9, and then immediately a year later was promoted to an 11, and then immediately a year later promoted to a 12. So I jumped roughly $20,000 in my first 2 years. I think that's pretty huge. I don't think we're seeing a lot of that in the private sector. So although I might have started off a little bit lower, I was definitely able to catch up to my friends within a year or two easily. And basically, most programs, like I said, they are on what's called a career ladder, where when you see something written as a 7-9-11 online, that's basically saying that after 1 year, as long as you've successfully completed what's required of you at work, you will automatically get a promotion up into the 12 or 13, depending on what job position you apply for. And again, you can get online and Google the GS scale and see specifically this Kansas City, Missouri area's salary. So some extra benefits. I mean, obviously you're going to get paid a salary every day, but there's a bunch of extra things. And I heard somebody say kind of that we have a strict schedule, so I will get into that with the flexible schedules. Student loan repayment. There are agencies out there that are repaying up to $10,000 of people's student loans. The stat, again, in 2009, 36 agencies provided over 8,000 employees with $61.8 million in assistance. So that's huge. Flexible schedules. We do work 40 hours a week. It's pretty much on the dot, because if you're working over 40 hours, you get paid overtime. So that's pretty nice. 40 hours a week is not too bad. I had a lot of friends after school working 50 or 60-hour weeks, and I pretty much went in 7, left at 4:30 every day. It was pretty nice. And with that comes flexible schedules. Most agencies end up allowing you to do what's called flex time, and I'm on what's called an alternate work schedule. So basically, I work 80 hours every 2 weeks, but I do it in 9 days. So I get a day off every 2 weeks. I choose to take Fridays off for me, it was huge when I graduated from school because I wanted to go to the football games every weekend. So I would leave on a Thursday night and have a 3-day weekend. You tie a free day off into a holiday weekend, you have a 4-day weekend. And that's even before your leave that you're already given as well. And our leave is kind of a little bit different in the federal government. We have annual leave, and then we have sick leave for like doctor's appointments and what other. And we accrue those hours. And as you stay in the federal government longer, you accrue more hours. I'm actually at the point now where I've worked for the federal government for 6 years, and I accrue 6 hours of annual leave, a pay period. So every 2 weeks, I'm accruing 6 hours. And basically every year I have to take off so many weeks of leave. Like I have to take off 3 weeks of leave every year, or I end up losing that leave. So I think I'm now at a point where I really have a really generous vacation package. Training and professional development. I kind of already told you my story. I've gotten my MBA, and it was funded by the federal government. And I also had that project management certification, which I was taking those classes while at work. I went to training classes during the week, 1 week, maybe every 6 months or so. And it was paid for, by the federal government. I know a lot of people that have gotten advanced degrees paid for by the federal government. So there's definitely great training opportunities. Some people are taking other certifications other than project management. That just happened to be the route I chose to go. The competitive health and retirement benefits. A lot of people have always heard about that one. Basically, when I started working for the federal government, I was given kind of a package of about 12 to 15 different health plan options, which was huge because I got to kind of pick, based on my needs, what was going to work best for me. A lot of times you go work for a company and you immediately have one option and that's it. It's kind of, Blue Cross Blue Shield and you have no options. You actually have an option. And what's so great is actually every year, and actually we're in open season right now, it's around October to December, every year I can change the plan. If I tried Blue Cross this year and wasn't satisfied with it, next year I can try Aetna. So that's kind of a huge flexibility as well, that every year we have the ability to change plans if we need to. Excellent advancement opportunities. Again, with that, the career ladder was one way that for me I've had excellent advancement opportunities, but even more recently, like the office that I just moved to, kind of a unique story with that is that I actually had gone on a detail there from my other office for 3 months. So I was able to leave my permanent job, go for 3 months to learn about marketing and kind of, see that I was going to like this job, and then eventually within a few months, ended up applying for the position that I'm in now. And I've had other friends that have worked on really unique opportunities within GSA specifically. I had 2 really good friends that have worked on the presidential transition team. GSA is in charge of that every time there's a new president that leaves and a new one comes in, and they got to basically help set up all the IT equipment and office space for Obama. And so that was pretty cool. They got to meet him and wipe his desk off and get it all ready for him. And there's just some really unique opportunities. And that's just at GSA, those 2 examples I gave. And every agency does something else unique. So kind of the whole myth of if you work for the federal government, you're going to have to, leave Kansas and move to DC. So here's kind of a glance of the U.S. currently of where the jobs are located. And as you see, 16% of all the federal jobs are in D.C., so there are plenty more spread throughout. Specifically, I ended up adding some Kansas City, Missouri agencies that are located just right here, just so you can kind of, these are just some ones that I know the partnership has worked with in the past that are definitely, again, kind of looking for college students to come work for them. So GSA that I work for is actually one. I actually lived in Kansas City for 3 months when I was an intern. I got the opportunity to move here for 3 months on behalf of GSA, and I worked in our headquarters. But as you can see, there are federal jobs throughout the U.S. and there's jobs overseas. I actually have a really good friend who just took a job in Germany, so he will be living there, for 2 years, and it sounds like a great opportunity. He'll just get to live in Germany, but work for GSA and then move back to the U.S. So there are plenty of opportunities to stay here, move to DC, or move overseas. And kind of the whole myth that we are all paper pushers. That's probably one of the more common ones, I would think. So I'm hoping that through kind of what you've heard me say my experiences have been, that I would hope that you would think that I don't think that, and that is definitely a myth. The reason I put the picture of Obama up here, because since I've been working in the recruitment field for the past 3 years, he has really made a huge effort and change to try and make government what he likes to call cool again. He really is seeking new, creative, fresh ideas and people that are energetic to come into the federal government. There are a lot of jobs open right now in the federal government, and there really is a push. There's also a huge hiring reform push, which I'm going to mention a few different hiring authorities that are out there that are kind of being revamped right now that are going to be great resources for you guys to be keeping up with in the media and then to potentially use to get into the federal government. He really is making a difference and really trying to push for kind of new, energetic, fresh ideas to come into the federal government. And in a way, he has to, because right now there are so many, there's such a huge percentage of our workforce in the federal government in general that's eligible to walk out the door tomorrow, eligible to retire. And as these people leave, we need to be getting new, fresh ideas coming in. YGL is the Young Government Leaders. It's an organization that does not have a presence in Kansas City yet, but I still wanted to share it with you guys. They do have chapters kind of spreading throughout the U.S. And basically, their whole mission, it's people that are new to government, young to government, that really want to get together and kind of tackle some of those issues that as we kind of progress in rank are going to affect us. So, they do social events, but then they also kind of talk, policy, and they're really just trying to, at the end of the day, kind of make a difference as well. And then GovLoop. So kind of just start with your research, or even just really with the word networking. GovLoop is kind of the Facebook for government. You can get on GovLoop. It's nationwide. It's also state and local government. And basically, it's a way now that people throughout the U.S. that work in government can really just get together and talk about issues. And it'd be a great way for you to get on there, find some people that maybe work locally for the government, and start talking to them about their jobs and talk to them about opportunities at their companies or agencies. And it was started by a federal employee who was about like 30. He was pretty young. So here is a bunch of resources that I'm going to go through. I'm going to go ahead and just skip to going straight into them, because that way I can kind of show you a little bit of what the websites look like and have to offer. And then if you want this whole list of them, I've shared this presentation with Megan from the Career Center, so she can pass this along. So USA Jobs, probably the most common website that you guys have heard of if you've started federal research. This is our hub for all federal jobs at the end of the day. Now, what's kind of unique about programs like the one I came into, it didn't have to be posted publicly on USA Jobs. So there are opportunities that are not always posted on here. And the reason I wanted to say that is because sometimes you might be like, well, how did you get that? I didn't see that on there, because it was posted on the career website potentially. So there is always other ways, but this is going to be where a lot of jobs are housed. And speaking frankly, it's not the best website. It's very confusing. If anyone who's ever been on there probably feels that way too. But they are revamping it. They are really, actually in October it closed for 2 weeks for them to revamp it. So they really, OPM, who owns this website, which is the Office of Personnel Management, they are revamping this constantly. So I think good things to come from here. But being able to get in there and look at what types of jobs are offered in Kansas City, because you can get into an advanced search and actually look by city, see what kinds of jobs, and then again, you can see all the agencies maybe in the Midwestern area if that's what you're interested in. Or if you're interested in moving to California, you can look and see what types of jobs. So this will help with your job search for sure, looking at what are the job series called, because we call jobs in the federal government series. Like I'm a management and program analyst, as Megan said earlier. So I am a 343, it's a series number. So we have our whole another language with federal jobs. And so they have a student section to this page. Specifically, I would say this is a great resource for a lot of the summer internships that are posted from federal agencies. So when you're on the main page, there'll be a little link at the bottom that says student jobs. So it just kind of starts to separate it a little bit. USA.gov, and what this website kind of has is an index for all government departments and agencies. This list is huge because there are, just like there's a bazillion companies out there, there really are that many federal agencies. So when I get to another website, I think it might help a little bit more with how to narrow that down. So here's the partnerships website. I would say start here, makingthedifference.org. They really have kind of made this very user-friendly for anyone looking for a job search. They've kind of decided what are the pain points in researching. They've tried to make it easier. So they have hot job sections where they kind of focus on really unique jobs in the federal government for students, cool internships for the summer. As you can kind of see across the top, what kinds of federal jobs are there? You can go into that link, and then if you were in law school, you could hit on legal, and then immediately it pops up with different jobs that specifically would be related to your field of study. And then kind of even from there, what are some cool internships, and where are these jobs located? They really have kind of put it all in one place for you to kind of start that research. And they have academic quick guides, which is kind of a little bit of what I was just talking about. So for business and finance, you'd pull it up and it would show examples of types of jobs, what they're called in the federal government. For instance, a budget analyst is a very common financial job in the government, and maybe you wouldn't have thought about putting the word budget in front of the analyst. So it really helps you kind of figure out what types of things will mirror your skill set and major. And then again, where those jobs are located, and maybe examples of how many people each year are hired in that series across the government. So you can just kind of get an idea based on major. And they have 17 different majors listed on their website. And sometimes you might have an undergraduate degree in 2 things and you're interested in both. So this way you can kind of look at those different jobs. So I like this website a lot too. So again, when I was saying that you could go to that one page and start looking at 100 plus agencies and be like, I don't know which one I want to work for. Well, maybe you want to go this route. This is done every year, or actually now it's going to be annual. It used to be biannual, that the Partnership for Public Service puts out. It's actually a survey that all federal employees take, so it's a survey that I took, and that I'm rating my agency, the things about it that I like and that I dislike. And then eventually it's all accumulated into this into this report that's called the Best Places to Work in the Federal Government. And it's now going to be put out annually, and not to brag or anything, but GSA is always in the top 10, and they have been since this survey was started about 8 years ago. But this is a great way to look at it, and the reason I would say that I would also go this route, looking to see what agencies employees that work there think is the best, is because I have had friends leave GSA, and almost always they kind of what we like to call boomerang back and come back, because they go to an agency maybe because they do feel really close to that mission, but they go there and the training opportunities are not as great. So although I'm kind of raving a lot about my training opportunities, it could be unique to my agency. And the only reason I caution you with that is that not every agency is the same. They all have their own policies. They all have their own budgets. But this is a great resource to kind of say, so obviously Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I think they've always been in the top 3, and I would never think of working there, but I would now because of this report personally. And so also, again, you can it can go into what kind of jobs are you interested in. If you're interested in talking about what things matter most to you, like training and development, you could see what agencies ranked highest in training and development, teamwork. Pay is on there because, again, not every agency follows the typical GS scale. Some have a higher pay scale. So if you, for instance, are in the field of law, every agency might do something different with that professional series. Some agencies may pay more for that degree versus another. And so this is a report that also has where the jobs are, and it's kind of showing, again, in the different fields, what agencies. So with legal, what agencies actually are looking for that major, same with education, engineering, etc. And then you can go straight onto the individual agency website. Once you've looked at some agencies and became interested maybe in their mission, maybe in the fact that they're on the best places to work, maybe because they have your, a lot of jobs in the major that you come from. So then you can kind of every single agency webpage, even though they're sometimes hard to find, which as you can see, this is going to start circling, has a career page and has information about it, finding career opportunities. Has even information about potentially like social media. You see this one has kind of a whole stay connected. And one of the best resources when I say network can be that you get on those pages, and if nothing else, if they have no information available about anything open, email the contacts on that page, on the career page. If it says that Erin Swain, is in the Kansas City GSA office, who runs the intern programs, email her and find out, about what opportunities lie ahead. So this is kind of my what's next. So again, I kind of alluded to some of those hiring authorities that are kind of being revamped in federal government right now. So if you've been doing any federal research, this isn't new news to you, but some things to kind of keep up with the changes that are going on. The 3 ones are the Student Pathways Program, the Student Intern Programs, I should have put intern in there, programs which are formerly were SCEP and STEP. Those are kind of if you go work a summer internship or co-op. then being able to be converted to the federal government from there. And then the Presidential Management Fellows Program, which is specifically for students with advanced degrees. So right now, we've heard that OPM will put out official news maybe like March timeframe. So be on the lookout. My agency's on the lookout for it so we can figure out our recruitment strategy and just kind of being able to keep up in the media with those. My second suggestion is research. I gave you, kind of went through all those websites, and it doesn't just take 20 minutes. It's not like typically maybe some of the other job searches you're in. You're going to have to sit down, take some time to pick the kinds of series that you're interested in, or maybe if you just care about working in Kansas City, then go that route. Just look through the cities and the jobs that are offered here. Or if you've always known you want to work for EPA, then you need to really do some research about that agency and the types of maybe potentially professional development programs they have or opportunities that they have. So the research, in my opinion, it takes time. It's definitely not, it's not a short process. It definitely takes some time to do that research. And that's the first start before you ever start the hiring process, because as you alluded to early, the question asked about the process, yes, applying for the federal government takes a lot longer than applying to a typical private sector company. It is getting better. I can attest to that from all the research that the partnership has done, but it's still a slow process. You might get an interview in January, and you may not know that you have the job until April. It's just very different than a typical private sector company that could tell you the next day. The process takes time. And I know that even speaking firsthand from going onto college campuses, by the time we get what we need from HR to even make a decision about hiring someone, it's been a while, and it's just the way it is. But it's getting better, so that's the bright side. And then networking. I gave you, the Gov Loop, and again, being able to kind of backtrack if you know that locally there's different agencies in Kansas City, Missouri, maybe it's outreaching to some of those and talking about opportunities or meeting with someone in HR. It's never going to hurt to network, because I know so many people that work at my agency that got in the door because they knew somebody, and that's always a huge, powerful tool. It always will be. So this is my information. Do feel free, and this is my work email, but do feel free to email me if you have any questions after the presentation today or just want to ask my opinion. I will give it. And just if you have any other questions right now, then you can let me know. Anyone? Sure.
Erin, would you talk a little bit about the fact that the resume process for the government is different than for the regular jobs that students apply for?
Sure. So basically we have, your traditional resume and your federal resume. And in your federal resume, it's not your standard one page. It can be pages. I've seen, 8 pages before for someone who's worked in the federal government for 20 years. Because basically the goal of the federal resume is you're putting every job you've ever had. It's probably more typical, I think, maybe once you've been working for a while, so not necessarily at that undergraduate level, but I have seen it required at that level, so it just depends. And you can get on usajobs.gov and also on the Making the Difference website and see kind of an example of what it looks like, but you're basically trying to put everything in, which is kind of opposite of what they tell you with the traditional resume. You put in everything because you don't know what one skill or task you did at one job that's actually what they wanted for this government job, and you just thought that you could take it off. Like you worked as a cash register, as simple as that is, at Target, and you're talking about managing money or whatever, and you just kind of like, oh, everyone knows what a cash register is, so you forget to write the description, and you actually needed it for a federal resume. So they look completely different than traditional resumes. And depending on, if you're applying on USA Jobs, you have to input one. So if you're applying directly on USA Jobs, you have to put in a federal resume. If you are applying typically through your student website, like your KU career website, then you may not be required to put one. Sometimes it'll say, sometimes it will not. Sure.
What is the federal job market expected to look like dependent on the administration that takes over next?
Are you talking about like career-wise or?
Just like percentage of jobs that aren't available.
I mean, from everything I've heard, the job part, it's still, I mean, there's still so many vacancies and there's still so many people retiring all the time, so I still think the outlook's going to be good. I mean, the stats from before this year, we're still needing to hire about 200,000 people a year, so I'd say that the outlook is still good. Sure.
So would we need to complete an internship to be competitive for a federal government job?
No. I think it helps. It's always going to make you more competitive, of course, just like, but, and it gives you an advantage in a way because you end up having hours of experience that then if you have enough of them working for the federal government plus maybe a side job that kind of was similar to the job you did in the federal government internship, you get enough hours, they can automatically convert you and they don't have to worry about any other sort of HR process to get you in. So it always helps. Sure.
Any tips for international students?
So unfortunately for international students, you can't work for the federal government. So you have to be a US citizen. So yeah, I don't have any tips other than that. Sure.
What exactly does the HR process do, and like why does it take so long?
Why does it take so long? I mean, that's a good question. Every agency has their own like average amount of days. I mean, that it takes. They've done studies on it. The partnership has, and there was one agency that took like 120 days to even find out like if you could hire that. I mean, it was some ridiculous number. The process varies based on grade, you know, like based on level. Like, you know, at the entry level, you just have to wait for HR to qualify the person's resume, and then they take a survey, and there's all these like little things behind the back that go on. And for other degrees, other jobs, I'm not even sure because I don't work in HR, so.
I mean, are they like calling every single one of these resumes?
It depends. If you're applying for a high security level job, they do some pretty intense calls. Like anyone you put down as a reference may get a call. They'll ask you to put like a neighbor and a best friend and a boyfriend, and they'll call all three of them. And I've had more or less like military police come and ask me about another friend. If you're trying to apply for an FBI or any sort of intel job, you're gonna get, yeah. And that process takes a long time, the whole security process. Anyone else? Sure. I'm not HR, so I'm not really positive. I know that friends of mine that have gone through top secret clearances, like, have asked silly questions about like getting a not silly questions, but asked about like if I had a DUI in college, can I work for the federal government? Yes, but I don't know if that means yes for every agency. So I'm not sure on those specifics. That could be something, if you were interested in one agency, you could ask an HR specialist. Sure.
So you're in the federal government. I was a lifeguard 10 years ago at an airport base. Is that still applicable to put on the resume?
I'm not sure. Yeah, like are you saying, yeah, because you worked on a military base. I think what it is that lifeguard job, if you needed credit for experience, could count if you, depending on what you were applying for. If you were applying to be a program analyst and part of the job talked about being a leader or something like that, and you could somehow tie that into that, then maybe you would want to put it. I know that sounds tricky. It definitely helps more at the entry level for something that long ago, like if it's like in college. Whereas more what I'm saying is that anything that's like a job post-college that you may not think counts for this job could count for a federal government job because of the hours and because of the experience. Because you're always trying to get more years if you're applying for above a GS 7 or 9. Anyone else? Well, if anyone else has any questions, and if you're going to the career fair, I'm going to have a booth there, and I'll just kind of be answering any questions that anyone has. Or again, my email if you have any questions. And just again to hit home, like maybe start on making the difference, spend a little time on their website, you know, based on your major or your interests, maybe see what types of jobs series lie out there in the federal government. And I can promise you that there's probably many that fit your skill set. So just got to do a little research. Thanks.